Hello and welcome to Kavish IAS Converting Possibilities into Reality. Today we are going to be covering a very important discussion in this session, and one of the most important contemporary issues that almost always stays in news are the water disputes in India. So in this session we are going to be covering most of the major interstate river disputes that are always in the news and they are active in the present times. So we will talk about them in brief, and we will also talk about some of the most recent water disputes that have been in news. So before we start with this, we are going to be covering a little bit about what is the present situation of water crisis in India. So we will look at some of the statistics, like India has around 18% of the world population, obviously, and 2.4% of the world's land resource and only 4% of the renewable water resource. So this is a very crisis situation, okay, because with 18% of the world's population, with almost 18% of the world's population, okay, we have only 4% of the water resources, the renewable water resources. So obviously there is a major water crisis. There is uneven water distribution throughout the country, which leads to obviously a tremendous water crisis. And apart from that, whatever water is available, even that water is severely contaminated, sometimes with arsenic or mercury or these other pollutants, or because of the tremendously aggravating situation of the soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution, the river water also gets polluted a lot. So this results in the healthy water deficit. So the thing is, one of the most important situations that arise is when the rivers originate from one state and they pass through several other states. So this lead to some disputes between the states. So this leads to some long pending disputes between the states or sometimes even the nations. So this is the origin of all the water disputes that has been happening. So currently India, since 2011, India has been a water stressed nation, and if we see the the water quality index parameter, we see that currently India ranks 120 amongst the 122 countries on the water quality index, and which is published by the Niti Aayog report. And another major issue that has to be taken into concern is the groundwater crisis. So India is one of the highest user of the groundwater. Okay. Highest user of groundwater is India, and India extracts almost 25% of the global groundwater. So in this situation, you can understand that the water disputes are of a tremendous importance. So these interstate water disputes occur when there is a dispute between two or more states regarding the usage. So there are disputes regarding usage, distribution, and we can say that the control of rivers, because the rivers flow from one area to another state and sometimes they pass through the boundaries of the states also. So that leads to water deficiency, water crisis, and often there is a dispute regarding the control of river water. So this is a major challenge when it comes to the federal governance in India, due to their historical and geographical nature and also constitutional ambiguities, okay, and institutional delays. They become prolonged conflicts. We see that some of the times the conflicts, they take shape in the form of extremely long lasting disputes between the states, and sometimes the center also has to be involved in between the disputes for proper adjudication of the disputes. and sometimes the water disputes take almost 50 years to get resolved, and sometimes they stay for like 50, 60, 70 years without being resolved. So we will learn in details what these disputes are all about. So we will look at what are the constitutional provisions that we have in this regard. So we have the entry 17 of the state list, which deals with water supply, irrigation, canal, drainage, embankments, water storage and water power. So the state list, basically the state deals with all of the issues concerning the water supply or the maintenance of dams or the construction of dams, construction of canals or the drainage issues, anything, or even the water power generation, the hydropower generation issues. But apart from that, we also have the entry 56 of the union list, which deals with regulation and development of the interstate rivers and river valleys, and this is declared by the parliament. So you can already see that although the state controls the regulation of the canals and the embankments and dams and water power, but still the development of the interstate rivers and the river valleys, that regulation and development of the river boards, that is declared by the parliament, that is in the union list. So you can already see that there is very important ambiguity that is there. And apart from that, we also see that there is article 262 which deals with the disputes. Now whenever we are talking about river disputes, anything about river disputes, we will be straight pointing towards the article 262 of the constitution. And this article 262 of the constitution deals with any kind of river disputes. So the parliament by any law provide for the adjudication of any dispute or complaint with respect to the usage, distribution or control of the waters of any interstate river or river valley. So any kind of interstate dispute that arises, and even if one of the states make a complaint, make a request, so anything that is in relation to the usage, distribution or control of the water, any dispute arising from that regard has to be dealt under article 262. Apart from that, we also have parliament by any law can provide that neither Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect to any such dispute or complaint as mentioned above. So there are two very important things that has been stated here, that Supreme Court, although we know is the highest lawmaker of the country, we know Supreme Court as the highest lawmaker, sorry, not the highest lawmaker, but the highest judicial office, not not lawmaker, highest judicial office. The Supreme Court has the right over any judicial decision in anywhere in the country, but in this case, in regards to the water disputes, the Supreme Court does not have absolute power, it cannot exercise any of its jurisdiction in case of the river water disputes. So then who controls this situation? Who controls? So any disputes regarding to the water usage, distribution or control is handled by the tribunals, right? The tribunals. So the parliament is empowered to constitute tribunals whenever any dispute arises in this situation, and it is clearly stated in article 262 that the Supreme Court or any other high court or any other state courts, they do not have the right, they do not have the jurisdiction to exercise their power over any such dispute. So we clearly saw that there are very major loopholes and constitutional ambiguities in this regard. So we will see what other details we have in article 262. So one important thing that has been mentioned is the construction of the River Board Act. This was one act that was implemented, that was formulated in 1956, and the purpose of this act was to enable the union government to create boards for the resolution of the interstate river disputes in consultation with the state governments. So the state governments will they will create the union government in consultation whichever states are concerned and whichever rivers are concerned, all the aggrieved states together, they will be, the union government will be consulting with all of these state governments, and they will be creating this river boards, okay, with regards to whichever rivers are in dispute. So this objective was to, the objective of the river board was to advise on the interstate basin, to prepare development schemes and to prevent the emergence of the conflicts. So whenever any conflict rises, the central government was empowered under this act, under the River Board Act of 1956, to create boards for the resolution of such disputes. Now amazingly, no river board has been created ever. Since 1956, no river board has been ever created under this act. So the second act that we will move forward to is the Interstate Water Dispute Act. This is the, you can say, the sole act which determines everything regarding the interstate water disputes. And under this act, it said that if any state approaches the union government for the constitution of a tribunal, the central government should try to resolve the matter by consultation among the aggrieved states. In case of failure, the tribunal is to be constituted, and Supreme Court can only question the working of the tribunal and not the award given. So it is said that under this act, whenever a state or even more than a state, okay, one state or even more than a state, any aggrieved state, they approach the union government for the constitution of a tribunal, they have to make a request, right? They have to make a request to the central government that please make a tribunal, because we cannot resolve this issue via negotiation among the aggrieved states. So after the request that has been made, a tribunal will be constituted by the central government, and they should try to resolve the matter by consultation. This was the method that was formulated under this particular act. And in case of failure, the tribunal that has been constituted, the Supreme Court can only question the working of the tribunal and not the verdict that has been given. So we can say that in case of these disputes, the tribunal has the final say, right? Tribunal has the final say. The tribunal will give the final verdict, and Supreme Court cannot even question the verdict of the tribunal. Next, we will see what are the major interstate river disputes that are currently active in India. So we will see in this chart that we have the Ravi and Bias river dispute between the states of Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan. We have the Narmada river dispute between MP, Gujarat, Maharashtra and Rajasthan. We have the Krishna river dispute, Kaveri, Vamsadhara, Godavari, Mahanadi, Mahadai and Periyar river dispute. If you want to take a screenshot of this chart, you can very easily pause and take a screenshot. So this is a culmination of all the important disputes that are currently active in India. Okay, all the disputes, sorry. So these are all the important disputes that are currently active in India. So we will see what is the present mechanism to resolve the disputes. So we already saw that the aggrieved states has to approach the central government, and they will request the central government to constitute a tribunal, and after the request that has been made, the central government will formulate a tribunal. So we will see that there are some active river water sharing tribunals which are there in India. For example, the Ravi, the Ravi and Bias Water Tribunal is there. The Ravi and Bias Water Dispute Tribunal, the Krishna, the Mahadai, Vamsadhara, Mahanadi Water Disputes Tribunal. These tribunals have been inactive for a long time, and they are still doing their work of resolving these river water crisis. And we will slightly see in details what is this method of resolution. So as we can see in this image, that whenever there is a situation, a crisis, a situation of conflict that has arrived, and there are suppose three states in which are dealing with a conflict regarding a river usage and distribution, and there is a water sharing issue that has been going on. So there are three states, right, that they want to negotiate and solve the issue, and the three states will negotiate first. Negotiation is done by discussion. So this was as in the example of the Yamuna river water dispute among Delhi, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. So they will make a negotiation that through discussion, let's try to resolve the crisis. So when the three states, or maybe four states, or maybe two states, they cannot come to a mutual discussion, they cannot formulate a mutual agreement, then the center is asked and approached to interfere into the crisis, and the center now sits along with them to resolve the crisis. If the center is not able to resolve the crisis, then a tribunal is formed by the union government. This one tribunal is formed. So we can see that this is how the tribunals have come into life, and these are some of the active river water sharing tribunals. Okay, also another important thing that I must cover here is that we know that the tribunals were added by the 42nd the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, and these kind of tribunals regarding the water usage and all of that, they come under Article 323B, right? Because the Article 323A, they deal with the administrative tribunals, and right now we are not talking about the administrative tribunals. The 323B article, this talks about many other issues, and one of them is the river water crisis tribunals, and this is also, the tribunals are under part 14A of the Indian Constitution. We will see that there were some amendments that were made in the 1956 Act of the Interstate Water Disputes Act, and some amendments were made in this act back in 2002 because there were extraordinary delays that were happening. Okay, there were delays in resolution of the conflicts. So there were many other ambiguities that the states were facing. There were issues with execution and implementation of the various conflicts, and so the tribunals face some issue which is why there are many delays that happen in proper justice delivery. So as we see in the Godavari water dispute or the Kaveri water dispute, they originated back in 1962, and in case of Kaveri water dispute, they originated back in 1970s, but they are still running. So you can understand that the disputes resolution is not really a simple thing, and so which is why some amendments were made back in 2002, and it was amended, and by which a tribunal, so it was decided that a tribunal has to be constituted within a year of getting a request. So the time period that was decided, that once the state government reaches for the central government that please do constitute a tribunal, we want to resolve this crisis, within 1 year of getting such a request, the central government has to formulate a tribunal. So the time limit given was 1 year, and apart from that, the tribunal was to give the award within 3 years. Okay, so it was decided that the maximum time period that the tribunal can take in giving a verdict was 5 years, and the maximum time period was actually 5 years, but it must give its verdict within 3 years. Other than that, the concerned parties may seek clarification within 3 months of the award being given, award or the verdict, the final verdict that is being given. If the states still have any kind of a grievance, then they can seek clarification within 3 months. Apart from that, the tribunal awards to have the same force as decree of the Supreme Court. So as we know that the Supreme Court cannot interfere in the verdict of the tribunal, so the tribunal's verdict will have the same force as the decree of Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court cannot interfere in the delivery of the justice or delivery of the final award. So now we will see what are the recent interstate river disputes that have been in news. For example, we will see the Kaveri water dispute that has been in news for a very long time. You will see the Kaveri water dispute always in news. It kind of just always stays in news because it's never resolved because of many issues that are related here in this dispute, and there are many states that are actually involved. For example, there is Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. So you can imagine 4 states, like 3 states and 1 UT is involved in this dispute. And the Kaveri river, it originated in Karnataka and it flows through Tamil Nadu and Puducherry before it falls into the Bay of Bengal. So we will see that in 1892 an agreement was made between the princely states of Mysore and British province of Madras, and then in 1924 a new agreement for 50 years was made, which was valid till 1974. Apart from that, in 1970 the Tamil Nadu government requested to form a tribunal, which actually got constituted in 1990s. Okay, so the Tamil Nadu government was it made a request to the central government because they were facing a water crisis, and they were facing a water crisis in which the Tamil Nadu government accused the Karnataka government to not give them enough water. So the grievance was against Karnataka government. Okay, and they requested the central government to form a tribunal, and the tribunal actually got constituted in 1990. So you can imagine that this agreement was made in 1974, and then the tribunal gets in 1970 the Tamil Nadu government request, and after 20 years, so see the delay is of 20 years, after which the tribunal is made by the orders of Supreme Court. And then in 1991 the Supreme Court orders the Karnataka government to release the water into the Mettur district of Tamil Nadu. But this request was actually refused by the Karnataka government. After 16 years, water allocation orders were given by the tribunal. What kind of orders were given? The tribunal advocated that the Tamil Nadu government will get 419 TMC feet of water. Karnataka will get 270 units. Kerala government will get 30 units, and Puducherry government will get only 7 units of water. This was discussed after 16 years, and but the thing is, this matter has still remained under judicial consideration, as Karnataka government has refused to abide by the orders of the tribunal, because Karnataka government claims that they already have a severe water crisis that is happening in their state, and it is impossible for them to give the excess water to Tamil Nadu, because they claim that they do not even have enough surplus water for themselves. So this is the situation that has been happening. You can see the timeline. It started from almost 1892, and then it's a tremendously long conflict that is still going on. And also we have the Satluj Yamuna link, this canal issue. So this Satluj Yamuna link canal, it's a proposed 214 kilometer long canal, and it connected the Yamuna and Satluj rivers. And according to Indus Water Treaty in 1960, we know that the Bias, Ravi and Satluj, these three rivers could be utilized by India, and the Indus, Chenab and Jhelum rivers were given to Pakistan's usage. But after creation of the Haryana government in 1966 out of the Punjab government, Haryana was mandated to get its water from Satluj and Bias through the supposed Satluj Yamuna link canal. But even after the construction of the SYL was launched in 1982, there were severe agitations, there were mass protests that happened, and the Supreme Court directed the Punjab government to complete the SYL work in its territory. But the work has always got jeopardized by several agreements. The Punjab government has terminated the agreement that was made in 2004. The Supreme Court declared the act constitutionally invalid, and recently in 2020 the Supreme Court ordered the chief ministers of both the states to settle the issue amongst the concerning situations of already overexploited groundwaters. So the present situation in Punjab and Haryana is that there is a severe groundwater crisis. Severe groundwater crisis that has been happening in both Punjab and Haryana, and Punjab government claims that it has already used 90%, almost 90% of its groundwater reserves, and it cannot now give its water to Haryana. It cannot continue this canal work. So this is the situation that has been happening, and these two disputes are in news. So we will see that what are the major challenges which are related to the disputes issue. So of course one of them is the judicial ambiguities, because the Article 262, this deters the Supreme Court from adjudicating interstate water disputes. And by Article 136, we note that the Supreme Court can hear appeals from the tribunals and ensure their implementation. So according to Article 136, the Supreme Court is liable to hear appeals from tribunals. So according to 136, Supreme Court still has a upper hand, right? But according to 262, the tribunals have a final say. So this is a major constitutional ambiguity, as you can see. So there is a huge gap you can see in the implementation of which authority to have the upper hand. who will have the upper hand in the dispute resolution? That is a major question. Apart from that, there are lack of political will. Okay, like non-enactment of the River Boards Act. There has been no constitution of any river board ever since the act was conceptualized back in 1956. Then there are perpetual delays. The Interstate Water Disputes Act 1956 provided no time limit, because you can see that although it was mentioned that after making a request, once a request is made, the tribunal has to be constituted within 1 year, but this timeline is never maintained, strictly never maintained. So this is one of the major administrative issue that is there. There are institutional gaps. For example, there are independent bodies which govern the water management, like Central Water Commission, or also the Central Groundwater Authority of India, the Central Groundwater Board of India, but these bodies are never consulted when these decisions are made. And also another important thing is the lack of ethics. So the policymakers, they do not realize the value of the ecological assets. They don't understand that ultimately it's the nature that's suffering, it's the humanity that's suffering. Many people suffer from water crisis. They do not understand the environmental cost of these disputes that stay for maybe most like even past 100 years. And apart from that, even there are some challenges regarding the tribunals. For example, the tribunals face some challenges like lack of autonomy. There is a severe lack of funding. Okay, when it comes to the tribunals also have infrastructural flaws. Okay, that is one issue. The tribunals are also they are chaired by the retired Supreme Court judges. So the retired judges, sometimes they do not have the exact the retired judges, they are appointed as the tribunal chairperson, and there is a lack of efficiency that is seen. So due to all these issues, these delays are constantly happening. We will see what is the way forward, that is clarification of institutional ambiguities. This has to be cleared. So regarding who should have the upper hand at the final verdict, the interstate cooperation promoting consensus building. So there has to be consensus among the states so as to promote the cooperative federalism and not let combative federalism win. Right? We are not aiming for combative federalism. We will be aiming for cooperation and coordination. Finding alternative to political negotiation with a political will, and adhering to environmental conservation principles while dispute resolution. So we need to promote the sustainable practices and application so that ethics are maintained. The environmental ethics, these are maintained. So what is the need of the hour? The need of the hour is to multifold levels of addressing the interstate water disputes should be removed. So one of the major things that has to be keep in mind is that there should be single stage prevention of complication regarding dispute resolution. We cannot have multifold levels of addressing the interstate water disputes. Apart from that, the way forward should be on the basis of maximum utility of the river basin capacity. We must take acknowledgement of the fact that that when 100 years pass, right, 100 years pass and the conflicts don't get resolved, the water capacity also gets deficit. The water capacity, seriously, it gets less with as more and more time passes. water capacity of rivers also get diminished. So these things must be kept into the mind, and also proper usage of technology, that this must be done so that earliest justice delivery can be achieved. So this was all regarding the interstate water disputes. That's all. Thank you.